Hi, I'm Moij Lally, President of Mindful Leader, and your host for the Mindfulness at Work Summit. For this session, we'll be joined with Diana Winston. Diana is the Director of Mindfulness Education at the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center, and she has been teaching mindfulness in a variety of settings from healthcare to education since 1999. She is the author of the just released The Little Book of Being, Practices and Guidance for Uncovering Your Natural Awareness. Welcome, Diana.
Thanks, Mo. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. And before we jump into our session, can you give our audience just a little bit of background on how you got started?
Well, about 30 years ago, I had graduated from college. I was a little lost and confused and somehow ended up in India. And I wasn't super interested in meditation or anything, but I found my way to Dharamsala, India, where the Dalai Lama's government in exile is, and heard teachings on mindfulness and meditation, and something just really shifted inside me. And then I jumped in like really fully. It became the defining thing in my life. I didn't know, did that sort of led me into my career in my life at that young age, and started to meditate a lot in and out of monasteries and retreat centers for the next many, many years. And here I am now at UCLA.
Wow. And teaching mindfulness since 1999, and lots changed since then. And I'm excited to jump into our session. The topic is advanced meditation practice from focused awareness to natural awareness. And if you could set things up for us.
Sure. So I want to talk to you all about ways in which we can expand our meditation practice. Oftentimes people get kind of stuck in ruts and they've been doing the same thing for a long time. And there's actually in these types of practices that are connected to mindfulness, there's a whole range of things to do. And if you think of meditation, meditation's a big category, like sports is a big category, and there's hundreds and hundreds of types of sports and different categories of sports. Like there's ball sports and water sports and so on. In meditation, there's many categories, and one category is awareness meditations. And so what I'm interested in is a whole range of ways to practice being aware that we're going to explore today. And I call this the spectrum of awareness practices. So we're going to look at that for a number of different reasons. First of all, it should be helpful for you to find different approaches for when you get stuck. So there's lots of ways to be aware, and I'll explain them all in a minute, but and to meditate with this type of awareness. But when you get stuck, it may be that one thing that you're doing could benefit from a different approach. And so we'll explore when you might want to use it. It's also helpful to learn about this spectrum because it helps us identify what's happening in our meditation. A lot of times we sit down to meditate and it's just something's happening. We're mindful, we're aware, and then the bell rings, we're done. But this we can start to begin to discern like, oh, I'm having this type of awareness or that type of awareness. So it's pretty interesting when that happens. And sometimes so the third reason you might want to do this is also that it's new approaches to deepen and enhance your meditation. I kind of mentioned that in the beginning. So I have what I call a spectrum of awareness. And Mo, if you would show the image.
Absolutely.
So this is something that is later available for you, but it shows four different types of awareness on a kind of spectrum. There's focused awareness, two kinds of flexible awareness that are investigative and choiceless, and then natural awareness. And this is based on my recent book called The Little Book of Being, which really focuses on natural awareness because I feel like natural awareness hasn't been covered so much out in the mindfulness field. But today we're going to go through all the different types. And I think as we practice together, you're going to say, oh, I know that one, or I've experienced that one, or, well, this one is pretty interesting. I want to explore it more. So it's pretty detailed. I'll go over it as we go along.
And Diana, as far as what people, to give them a sense of what they might have already practiced or what they're most familiar with, you mentioned that natural awareness is outside of what the norm is when people practice mindfulness, where do people tend to? What's sort of the normal thing in that spectrum that people might be more accustomed to?
Sure. I think most of us are used to the territory in the first two, the focused awareness and what I call investigative awareness. And so focused awareness is like when we're staying with our breathing, our attention wanders, we bring it back. Investigative awareness is we're staying with our breathing, something else happens, we pay attention to it and we come back. This is sort of typically what people do. And it's really how mindfulness is taught quite significantly out there. And it's just to say it's a great way to practice. It's not like I really don't think that there's a hierarchy of meditation practices. There are just different ways to do the practice. And I'm going to give a quick analogy because this might help make it way more concrete for people. If you think of a camera lens, right, you can take a photo with a telephoto lens and it becomes a very narrow, focused image. You can take sort of regular lenses on, use just a regular picture, right, where it's maybe just a person in front of you or a site. And then you can take panoramic photos. And these are wide, expansive photos. And we can take any of those photos, and they're all wonderful, right? They're all great ways to take photos, and we use them at different times. So we can have a mind that's kind of narrow as we meditate, meaning like just focused on one particular thing. Or we could have a more mid-range one, we're noticing multiple things, or we can have a wide open, spacious awareness where everything is included. And so that's might help you get a sense of what I mean when I talk about the spectrum of awareness. I just want to say a couple more things about it, and then we'll get started. We'll kind of jump into it. But the first thing is that this is based on the work that I've done personally and teaching students for a long time now. And when I first started meditating, I probably spent the first 10 years of my meditation trying to just stay connected to my breath and then noticing objects. I want to clarify objects of meditation. This is important for what we're going to do. Objects of meditation are the things we notice in meditation: our body, the sounds, our breath, the emotions. This is called objects of meditation, or thoughts or objects. So when I was meditating for the first 10 years of my practice, I found myself pretty much always coming back to my breath, noticing things, noticing objects, coming back to my breath. And then I spent a year living as a Buddhist nun in Burma. And I had shaved my head and renounced my things, which I didn't really do. I put them in storage. But anyway, I was living in the monastery for a year. And I found that once I practiced in that very sort of focused way, this whole other world of meditating opened up to me. So after about 5 or 6 months, I found that this focus practice wasn't really organically what was arising. What was arising was a much more spacious awareness. And so I began to practice in that way, and then later on received lots of teachings to help support and understand how my practice was evolving, which is really in this realm of natural awareness. So I've seen this with a lot of students that they might start in one way and then they open up to a different practice, but out in the kind of mainstream mindfulness world, people are not teaching it. And so I'm really interested in how do we teach this? How do we teach it? Because I think it's accessible to anyone. And you don't even have to practice 10 years either to have this experience. Because just another quick story was that when I was a young girl, probably about 14 or so, I was out at the beach, and I laid down on a blanket under the stars, and I looked up at the sky, and it was, this incredible night sky, and something shifted in me, and suddenly there was this profound sense of love and openness and connection, and I was just blown away, and I didn't do anything. It just kind of happened. And I tell you this because so many students report similar stories, that there were these moments when they were out in nature or when they were a child where they connected into a place of just complete resting in a sense of being. And this is the quality of the natural awareness that we're going to be exploring as we explore these different practices. So even though it can really enhance your meditation. If you're new, you're going to have recognition of it as well, because I believe that experience I was having was very connected to natural awareness.
I see. And you mentioned, Diana, that there isn't a lot of work being done around this, as far as in the traditional mindfulness communities. I know Locke Kelly has done a little bit of work around this, and curious if you could speak to that just a little bit, as far as, because some of our audience might have seen a session with this last year, and to kind of connect maybe what he's doing or differentiate it from what you're up to.
Yeah, I think Locke Kelly's work is wonderful. And I think that we're very much aligned in our perspective of what he calls effortless mindfulness. I call it natural awareness. We just have different terms for it. And I just also want to be very clear that neither he nor I like invented it out of the blue or something. This is deeply rooted in other traditions that haven't been so integrated by the mindfulness communities. Like, I'll just say them, they may sound unfamiliar to people, but Tibetan Dzogchen practice, Hindu Advaita Vedanta, Zen practice enters this territory. So those are some of the main influences. But what we're teaching here, what both Locke and I are doing, is not trying to teach any of those practices. I'm not a teacher from that tradition. What I have done is, having my own mindfulness practice for so many years, I'm speaking from the perspective of the mind, essentially the mindfulness perspective on these practices.
So, very cool.
So, shall we give them a try?
Let's do it.
Okay. And Mo's going to be my guinea pig. So we're gonna all practice. Invite you to practice along, and then we'll hear what Mo's experience is. So what I want to do is start with the most narrow end of the spectrum, and there are a couple of things. I have different what I call parameters, and I don't want to lose you here, but just to clarify, the very far end of the spectrum, the first one is a focused awareness, and it means that the lens is very telescopic. It's a very narrow lens. So our awareness is very precise and narrow. It takes effort. So another aspect of this is it takes effort to do it. So if you're trying to pay attention to your breathing, you bring it back, your mind wanders, oh no, you come back and you keep bringing it back. So it takes effort. So that's the second parameter. And the third parameter is that you're focusing on an object. An object, remember I said, was your breath, your body, sound, and so forth. You're focusing on an object. For most people, it's the breath. Now, I will say there are some of you out there who don't use the breath as your main focus, as your meditation anchor. And so if it's sound that you use or body sensations, you can do the same thing that we're going to do using that. Okay. So let's settle back. If you want to close your eyes, if you're comfortable doing that. And we're going to do very short practices, but just enough time to get a sense of what I'm talking about with this first domain, this focused awareness practice. So take a breath or two, feeling yourself seated here. Allowing yourself to relax a bit. And as we do this whole set of exercises, I just want to encourage you to have fun with it. Like, don't take it too seriously. It's just we're exploring, we're playing with awareness. So let's come to rest on our breathing. And if you're not a person that notices your breathing, you could also just notice the sensations in your hands or the sensations in your feet. Let's start with something very concrete and physical. So feeling your breathing, noticing your breath in your abdomen, rising and falling, expanding and contracting. Or your chest area, rising and falling, expanding and contracting. So if you can really feel it, we're not imagining or thinking about our breathing, we're feeling our breathing. Or you might notice the air moving through your nose, tingling, vibrating, warmth. So just to stay really focused on the breathing and or sensations in your body if you've chosen that. And when your attention wanders, just bring it right back to your breathing. You can say a soft word in your mind like thinking, and then return it right back. So just keep returning it again and again. Now, lots of other things may be happening, like sounds around you or something in your body. Let that be in the background and really simply cultivate the focus, attention. Attention wanders, bring it back. So we'll try it like a minute or so without me talking. Okay, just feeling your body present on the chair or wherever you are. And then let's open our eyes if they're closed. Okay, so this is a practice that I bet most of you are familiar with. And I'm curious, just Mo, what was the experience for you?
Mm, it is something that I'm really, really familiar with. And for me, there's definitely sometimes when I'm focusing on my breath, I just feel like I'm tightening up. And so I have to sort of consciously kind of pay attention to just my face kind of tightening up and sort of a tightness. Um, and and definitely there's effort and and afterwards, like when I open my eyes, I do have just things are crisp. Things are really crisp.
Okay, great. So that's so you're demonstrating, you're excellent. The having the concentration. So when you practice in this way, it concentrates your mind. And concentration is just a unifying and gathering, a focusing of your mind. It builds stability, it builds clarity, it builds so it's a very, very helpful thing to do, wonderful way to practice. And also it takes effort, as Mo was talking about. Like there's a little tension. So some of these practices take more effort and less effort. So that's the first one that, as I said, you're probably familiar with. All right. So now we're going to move on the spectrum. And you can imagine sort of like a line from one end, from the focused end to the very broad end. We're going to get a little broader here. This is a flexible awareness, and I call it investigative awareness. So let's give it a try, and then I'll explain a little bit more. So settle back again comfortably. Take a breath or two. Just and always kind of can calm ourselves down a little bit if we need it. And let your attention come to rest on the area you focus on. I mentioned our breath in our abdomen or chest or nose. If you have experience with one, just stay with what you normally do. If you're new, just pick the one that is the most obvious or clearest. They all work equally well. Just feeling the breath, breath after breath. Now, for this one, when other objects of meditation arise, and that means you feel a sensation, you hear a sound, an emotion comes. Instead of just immediately snapping your attention right back to your breathing, let's say you notice these things, let your attention rest there for a little while. So you're with your breath, you have a sensation in your body, you notice it, you feel the warmth, the heaviness, the tightness, the movement, and it disappears. Then you come back to your breath. You stay with your breath, you hear a sound. The sound pulls you away. You listen to the sound. So let your attention be a little more flexible. And if you notice that you're lost, notice what has pulled you away. What has pulled me away? So let's try it. And again, have fun with this experiment. What happens when I attend in this way? Okay. So now let's just come back to our body, feeling your feet on the floor. And when you're ready, open eyes if they're closed. Okay, now this one should feel pretty familiar as well. And so let's hear your experience.
Yeah, I think for me, it was it was actually a little difficult where um, I'm just used to coming back to the breath, and so I was sort of able to on like the out breath, let it shift, and then on the in breath, I come back. And then I was also able to kind of hold two things at once, and it might just be because of what I practice. And so, sort of having one object in the background and one object in the foreground. But it was actually kind of difficult to let myself free. Oh, and then come back, and it just might again be just from what I practice.
Yeah, and this is actually really a natural thing that happens with people when they do it. They're like, "Wait, I'm used to just staying on the breath." But I know that for most people, you have done this type of practice. So what's hard to do it is to make it happen kind of like intentionally, but it often happens organically. So you're with your breath and suddenly an emotion arises and you stop from paying attention to your breath and you just feel the emotion and you let it be there and it grows or expands. Like when you practice rain, many people are familiar with the rain practice. Recognize, allow, investigate, not identify with. These are all investigative awareness practices. So it was a little artificial right now because I was kind of saying, now do it this way. And then maybe your mind and body didn't really want to go that way, but you saw what happens as you begin to open up. All right. Okay, so now I'm gonna really make you open up way a lot. So just get ready. Were you gonna say something or no?
No, I'm excited to try the
Keep
next part
going.
here.
Okay. So remember everybody, all of these happen organically at different times in our meditation, and we're trying to evoke them. So as I said before, it's a little artificial, but just see what happens as you try it.
Actually, there is one thing I wanted to share, just because I feel others might feel this way, and I have in the past, that there is no sort of right answer or right way, and to kind of experiment with it. So not to kind of force an outcome or anything, and just to play with it.
Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. This is not about becoming like superstars in meditation. This is about really just exploring what our consciousness is capable of. And that's why it should be like a fun and playful experience. Okay. So let's again settle back, whatever way is comfortable for you. Taking a breath or two. So we're going to practice a choiceless awareness. And in a choiceless awareness, there is Still some effort. It is a more expansive awareness, and we still have objects, but we let go of our main focus. So notice what's happening right now without necessarily staying with your breath. So there might be a sound and your feet. You notice your feet, and then there's a memory, and then an image. And just settle back and kind of let experience happen. There's this, and there's this, and there's this, and notice it. And see what happens as you don't go back to your breath specifically. Noticing your heartbeat, noticing you get nervous, noticing just moment after moment. This is often called choiceless awareness. And then if you start to feel a little like, help, I don't know what I'm doing, just go back to your breath for a while. Stay with it for a few breaths and then open up to whatever is happening in your experience. If your attention wanders, right back to whatever is most obvious to you right now. The sound, the memory, the feeling in your body, could be the breath. Okay, so now come back to your breath for a minute, or not a minute, just a few breaths. To just feel the stability and the familiarity. And also notice the difference. And when you're ready, you can end the meditation. All right, so let's see what happened.
That was fun. I found for me that it was body sensations that I was jumping to, and it tended to be, um, probably if I was to guess 7 or 8 areas in particular that sort of bounce around. They tend to be feeling a little bit of pain or dull pain or feeling like a pleasant sensation. And so it wasn't like the subtle ones, but the ones that stood out that would just draw me bouncing around.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's choiceless awareness. I love how you describe it, bouncing around. It's like your attention gets drawn to something and then to another thing and another thing. And this is something that we experience sometimes when we meditate. Um, but probably because so many of us have been taught, like, stay with your breathing. We don't give it as much space and time. And so it's a wonderful way to practice if it's organically arising, and it can help really sharpen your awareness of all the multiple things and the changing things that are happening in your body and mind. So it's a fun way to practice when you want to shake things up a little bit, or if it's happening naturally on its own. Um, and for some people, it can feel really hard. Like, wait, I need to stay with my breath. That's the most important thing. So with all of these, you don't want to force anything. This is just to let you know different ways of being aware. So don't feel like, oh, I can't do this one and I failed or something. That's silly. They're all just there. It's a whole range of ways of practicing.
And one thing I would share is that it's making me wonder how the practices that I'm most familiar with, sort of body scans and noticing the gross and subtle sensations, how that might be informing my approach to this. And so, I'm just curious, asking myself, why is it sensations that stood out? Why was it more the gross sort of amplified sensations. And so I wonder if others might have similar experiences where their practices might be affecting how they experience this meditation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a great point. Thank you. All right, so we're going to try the last one in a minute, which is now we've moved from very narrow to broader, to more like the regular photographs. Now we're moving into the panoramic lens. We're going to get expansive. We're going to try to. The joke is it's like we're making effort to not make effort. So even though it is considered an effortless end of practice, we're going to sort of try to get there. We'll see. But I'll encourage that you'll see when we do that. And then it's also not object focused. So this is a really important piece because every meditation up until now has been focusing on objects of meditation. Now we're going to focus on something else, and that's the awareness itself. And the way we can experience the awareness itself is some people experience it as that in which everything is contained, like our minds are like the sky and the clouds are all the things passing by. We're going to notice the sky instead of the clouds. That's the movement from object to objectless meditation. All right. So let's give it a try. Settling into yourself and just kind of checking what's happening inside me as we start this last meditation. Letting whatever is here be here. And let's start by listening. Let's start by listening to sounds. There are sounds around you, likely. So let's listen to the sounds and see if you can listen to the farthest away sound. And then notice your body. Can you feel your body present? And notice the back of your body. And then as if you could sense the field around your body, sense into the space around your body. This is a thought experiment, so just kind of sense, and then sense as far away around you as you can. And now include the hearing. So we're expanding our body sense. We're going to expand our hearing. And if anybody wants to, you can open your eyes and begin to look peripherally, like not at anything in particular, but as if your field of vision was expanded, and taking all of this in. And then I just encourage you to rest and soften and just be. Nothing to try to do. We're just here. Awareness is always present. So we're just resting our attention in what is, letting yourself be. Our minds are vast and open, spacious, like the sky. All the thoughts are just clouds floating by. Can we connect with the sky? And then just ask yourself a question. What would be here if there was no problem to solve? If nothing was wrong? And let's just rest here for a tiny bit. noticing what's present for you. Feel your body here on the chair or wherever you are. And let's end the meditation. So, well,
Wow. Um, when there was a point where it was sort of this expansiveness with the sound and early on the vision. And at that point, I was starting to feel stretched. And then I forget your exact phrasing, but um, whatever you said kind of let me stop like trying and sort of stretching and then settle down. And then I just felt myself like wanting to stretch, but without sort of the command to do it, if that makes any sense. Or sort of like just wanting to. Um, and and I feel and I have to admit, like part of me, my mind started wondering, like thinking about what do I look like on camera? Am I thinking my face? It's like I couldn't help jump there. And then brought it back and yeah, I feel like right now like, there's definitely it's sort of like a lightness. Like I feel lighter, yes, maybe.
yeah. So you can see that there's so many ways to practice and so many experience we can have, and we're not aiming for something in particular, but I was just hoping that you and everyone would get a sense of like, oh my gosh, this field is vast. Consciousness is vast. There's so many ways to explore awareness. And with this last one, people often report a lightness or a sense of well-being or calm or joy. And it's like instead of like, okay, I have to meditate to get there, it's really tuning into the awareness that's already present. Like we're already aware. You know, if I were to say to you, don't be aware, everybody, don't be aware, 1, 2, 3, go. It's impossible, right? We're always aware. So it's kind of tuning into the awareness that's there and allowing that sense of being and resting to just naturally be there. And that is another way of being mindful. It's just different than the way that most of us are used to. So that was the kind of the spirit. I wanted to show us all these different kinds of practices so you can take that home to your practice and you can play with it and see what's live for you, and maybe one of them you really liked or connected with and you want to keep going with it, and how do I do more of the natural awareness practices, or I liked that choiceless awareness, I want to try it. So really it's up to you, everyone, to take it from here and play with it. And in my book I have lots of what I call glimpse practices, and those glimpse practices show you, are they're like just little suggestions you can drop into your meditation to access the natural awareness.
Wonderful, and just something that occurred to me. I'm feeling pretty nice right now, but I feel like it was the combination. So, scientifically speaking, because there was a meditation before the one I did, the effects could sort of all bleed together. But I feel like that was a really fun exploration. And for folks who might be out there facilitating or teaching mindfulness, what would you suggest to them? Is this something that they could start playing with, or how could they incorporate this possibly into their tool set?
Well, a number of my students who are mindfulness facilitators have been using these glimpse practices to just expand their way of teaching, like adding this other territory in. But the most important thing would be to do it yourself first. Don't just try to teach it. You've got to have the experience so you can teach from an embodied place, which goes for everything you teach with mindfulness, but in particular these.
Cool.
Yeah. And I want to add one thing, which is there's not a hierarchy. It's not like one is this magical special awareness and one is just like the hard old school meditation. You know, we go in it, just like you were kind of pointing to, Mo, we go in and out of all of them. And sometimes for me, I've been meditating for 30 years. So today I just want to notice my breathing. That's enough for me today. And that feels great. So you can do them at different times, mix them up, play with them, have fun with it.
Awesome. Well, Diana, this was a lot of fun. And for folks who might want to connect with you or learn more about your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Um, you can either go to my website, dianawinston.com, and I'm also at the Mindful Awareness Research Center, which is, well, you'll have the link, mark.ucla.edu. And we will soon have an app for lots of free guided meditations, which is going to be UCLA Mindful, and that should be coming in June.
Fantastic. And will these kind of meditations be a part of that app as well?
I have some on there, not a huge amount because it's more recently that I've been teaching it, but absolutely. And I'm also on the 10% Happier app as well.
Very cool. Well, Diana, thank you for joining us and being part of the summit.
Oh, well, it's been really great to be with you. Thank you.
That brings our session to a close. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.